You know, I like comparing to the competition.
Right.
What you're going to hear today, you can take to the bank.
That's right.
Okay? If it's an opinion or something I believe, I'll tell you that. Okay? But these are facts that we've learned today. And, you know, this, please don't pay attention to this double pump 540 gallon per hour system back here. We haven't released it yet. Yeah. So, but we're doing this, we're going to share the information that we've gathered over many years, okay, and why we've been able to get so our unit's so quiet, but also that million-mile life.
That's right.
Okay. First of all, we use two motors. Okay.
Correct.
This smaller motor is for anything 165 gallons or less,
Right.
and under 20 psi.
Correct.
Okay. And then we have this bigger motor that it's about 1 3/4 inches longer.
Right.
Okay, different windings, different specs, okay, for anything over that 20 psi and or over 165 gallons per hour.
Correct.
Okay, so now what we have is we have a 335 gear here, a 400, 625, and a 750 gear. Okay, if you look at our competition, they're going up to 960 thousandths.
Right.
Which, you know, we've surrounded ourselves with a great network of people. We were not gear specialists.
Right.
They tell us not to go over 750 thousandths.
And how we found that out, when we were looking to do a higher flow rate system, we actually did this. We tested, now never in production,
Okay.
but we tested with stacked gears.
All right, okay.
These
Didn't we
gears-
take a 335 and a 625?
We did.
Okay.
We did. It was a 335 and a 625 gear. What we learned from the gear manufacturer, because we were wanting to have this just manufactured as one solid gear. But what we learned is anything over 750 thousandths begins losing efficiency and filling capacity.
Right. It also puts a bigger load on your motor, but, and I'll clue you in, I was looking at doing the stacking through the our production, because then I wouldn't have to carry another part.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
But what did you discover?
Well, with these stacked gears, one thing you're going to run into as you get some miles on your
Right.
pump and you start to get some wear.
It breaks in, just like a
Breaks
pair of
in.
tennis shoes, right?
Right, pair of tennis shoes or an engine,
Yeah.
piston ring blow by, right? Pretty much everybody's familiar with that.
Okay.
What you're going to get here with some wear, it's called slip. When we're
Okay.
talking about gears, you're going to have this is going to be creating pressure, and then as it wears, diesel fuel will slip between the two gears, and it's going to lose flow and efficiency.
So not only going over 750 thousandths is losing it, but they're allowing the slip to lose it.
Right.
And cause blow by, basically.
Basically, exactly right.
Okay. Now, when we're matching up gears with the motor, we don't just stop there. It's gears, motor, relating to pressure and amperage. Okay.
Right.
Now, this motor likes to run, give or take, about 2-3 amps off of how much?
Runs at this is rated at 10 amps.
Okay, so plus or minus 2 to 3 amps, right? We're
Correct.
good.
Correct.
And then this one, our bigger motor,
That's rated at 30 amps.
okay. And we don't even touch 30 amps.
We don't. There's a massive buffer built in with this 30
Okay.
amp motor.
Now, when we test, and we're building this buffer, because we're testing at 70 degrees right now,
Right.
with clean filters. Now, when you chill the fuel, viscosity goes up.
Correct.
It's thicker. You go from pumping, and I'm going to exaggerate, you're going to go from pumping paint thinner to molasses.
That's rough. Basically, yeah.
Okay. And then the same thing with filters, then the amperage goes up. So you had to plan for this.
Right.
And we kick butt in cold weather. The Canadians love us.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we're going to match, we do not even put the 750 gear on this motor. Now, this motor, they're saying it's good for a 165 and a 220, which we'll
Correct.
touch. But look at the motor size. Now, the specs are different, okay? But it doesn't have the body and everything to dissipate the heat,
Right.
okay? Where when you take a look at these two motors, you do.
Right.
Okay. Now, when we get to the bigger motor, now we can run all 4 gears.
Right.
At a different time, we don't stack them.
Yeah, exactly right.
So that's why when you go and you look at our parts, our part numbers, if it says 165, it's 165 at that, whatever that engine needs, but it's usually below 20 psi.
Right, right.
But when you go and you see that at 40 psi, at 75 psi, that's on diesel fuel at that pressure.
Correct.
So you know when you buy this, that's what you're getting. So if you going up your horsepower and you need more flow, you know what you're getting.
Right.
Explain to me what they're doing here, or not.
Well, one of my findings when I put it on the flow bench, as we always do with a competitor's product, just to know what we're going up against.
Which I'm looking at here.
Right, and always be familiar with the market, and again, know exactly what our competition's running. What we found is this motor seems to max out at around the 20 amp range, right? But that is what we believe is maximum rated draw on this motor.
But I have a beef with you on that.
Right.
It says they send it out at 30 psi?
Correct. They send it preset at 30 psi. Now this would be on a 12 valve pump. So they send it preset at 30 psi. Now they say this can run at a maximum of 50 psi. This is the 220G.
But at 30 psi with warm fuel, clean filters, we're running 16.1 amps.
Right.
And we're pumping 204 gallons an hour, and it says right here 220.
Right.
And then if you run it at 50 psi, you're at 20 amps, and that's not counting the spike when you first initiate the motor, and you're running 162 gallons an hour. Now they did here at 15 psi for a common rail.
Yep.
It's 13 amps. That's healthy.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it's not the size of motor that we have to dissipate the heat.
Correct.
And they're flowing 228 gallons an hour. So advertising, marketing, you're doing a job there. Okay, on the 165.
Right.
A little bit of sarcasm there. At the rated pressures, it's not 220.
Correct. And I did say that I said a maximum of 50 psi, but these are rated at a maximum of 55 psi to specify they can run at. And if you look at 55 psi, you're actually over amp on the motor, and it would have blown the fuse because it's a 20 amp fuse in the wire harness.
See, we've tested ones before, and they had a real big one out, and you have to have that spread. You have to have that buffer for cold weather. Now, if you're going to put clean filter on and run in Arizona, you're fine.
Right.
Finer. Okay? But there's more of a buffer here. These motors for the Signature Series, there's several reasons that we came out with the Signature Series. We had 3 years of testing, about $400,000 in R&D on that, okay, before we released it. And you've seen our Connex box, you've seen how we test and everything. Yeah. But you know what? We built these to go 1,000,000 miles. That's not the same here.
Correct.
I will guarantee that. I got to go here again. This one's good for a 220.
Right.
But they're running the same filters just like we do, from 100 to 290 or 540.
Right, right.
But look at our efficiencies. That's why we're able to get it. We invest in the filters. We don't go out and get cellulose filters. I got to take a little side step here. They had their system that's competing with our industrial series for the semi-market,
right,
heavy duty. They're using a wire screen here, which we used to use back when there was free water, and there's still free water, but now it's more of it's emulsified. Mm-hmm. They have very little water separation.
Very little, if any at all. And there's going to be more testing on that and data to come.
Okay. Now, what happens to the efficiency right now at like 165? They're 165 gallon per hour systems. This filter's taking out, let's say, you know what, I'm going to reverse that. This filter's taking out about 44% of the water.
Right.
So they're telling you to take off your stock system that OEM built and will stand behind if there's a warranty issue.
Correct. Take
that off and put on our inferior water separation system.
Right, right. That will supply more contaminants to the engine than the factory system would have.
I can't help myself. This system is letting about 44% of the water pass.
At least.
Okay. So if I was a shop foreman, bringing in this Ford back here, Dodge or whatever, and I saw just this on here and I knew what the water separation was and they were having injection problems, I'd be looking at the blame here.
Right.
Because here this customer thinks he's getting great water separation, so he's taking off the OEM system that they'll stand behind unless you put in a tank of water like I have in ours.
Yeah.
And they're letting 44% of the water pass. At least.
At least.
That's at 165, and that's not rating at 220.
Right. Right, yes. And the reason that is, this is a coalescing water separator.
Okay.
And a very small one at that. And with coalescing water separators, as flow rates increase, the water separation efficiency drastically drops off. So this size filter, now this was from a filter manufacturer, and this size filter is generally rated at about 64 gallons per hour.
Okay.
The smallest system that they offer is 100 gallons per hour. So even their smallest...
And this is at 220.
This is 220. Even their smallest system is not going to provide adequate water separation.
And we're taking out 99.6% of the water.
Right, because we have our extreme water separator that traps the water and it's not coalescing.
I got to touch on the heavy duty system, which you're going to have more information. They're using a wire screen element, which works for free water, but when we went to the lower sulfur fuels, we have more emulsified water. That's why we're taking it out on the pressure side now, and just putting a pre-screen here to get the gravel before it hits our gear.
Right.
So we're going to have more on that. You know, they did listen to us a little bit. They have a 12 gauge wire on here now.
Right.
But they're running you know, the high amps here. They're running, I mean, 21 plus amps. That's on clean fuel, clean
Right.
filters. I should say warm fuel and clean filters.
Right.
So that's going to go up. They really need to run. This is free advice from what we've discovered, the R&D that we've done. You need 10 gauge, but you have to spend money.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So Josh, I'm going to ask the audience out here, what would you like us to compare to next? Pick out your air dog that you want us to compare it to. We'll pick out the FASS system that best matches apples to apples.
Yep.
We'll go from there, and give us your comments, because one of the things that we want to do is we don't want to just knock on them. We won't just knock on them.
Right.
We want to be fair. I didn't mention their 3/8 porting
Right.
versus half-inch.
Right.
You know, I didn't mention things like that. I guess I did.
Just now, yeah.
Oh, okay. but we're going to bring you facts, because we're also wanting to see if we can learn anything.
Now, if you guys want to see more videos like this, comparisons between us, AirDog, or other competitors, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll keep them coming.
Thank you.
All right.